right. How we doing up here?
Doing great.
Doing
A
good.
little sweaty, but it's all right. That's why we're in Cannes.
We were saying the spotlights make it a little better, right? Just extra
light.
heat.
Yeah. All right. We're excited for this. Thanks to Michael and that team for getting everybody focused. This is great. We have an all-star crew up here. We're going to tackle just a small issue of what the heck is going on in media and what's the future like. So we have a great group here. We're organized here a little bit in sort of buy side, sell side. So maybe we can square off a little bit in a fun way. All right. So why don't we just start with introductions? We're going to do the name, title, and kind of just given the climate, maybe just one word that encapsulates how you're feeling about the current state of advertising right now.
All right. My name's Steve Hartman. I head up marketing for Experian's consumer business. We work with probably everybody in this room in some capacity from the data side, but we also have a big consumer business. So I head up marketing for that. I think the word that I would say is pivotal. I think we're at a really pivotal point of marketing. There's disruption through AI. There's measurement and data privacy issues and concerns, and I think we're kind of in a place where we need to figure out all of it. And it's not easy. It's fun, and it's a fun problem to have, but we are definitely in a pivotal spot.
Pivotal's good. Agreed.
Hi, Christine Martino. I'm Chief Revenue Officer at Screenvision Media. The one word, and I didn't know we get to explain it afterwards, but the one word I was going with is recalibrating.
Nice. I'm Sarah Squiers. I oversee Client Partnership Group at TelevisaUnivision, and I oversee the financial and insurance category. And I would say my word is curiosity.
Love that. Okay.
Hey everyone, I'm Shane Dwyer. I run sales at Lyft Media, which if you don't know what that is, it's an advertising business that we're building within the walls of a rideshare company called Lyft. And I would say the word that would maybe encapsulate what I'm seeing here, what I'm feeling about the business is energized.
Okay, so we got a little bit of going through transition, but we're cautiously optimistic. We're excited. There's energy. I think that's maybe a good way for us to kind of frame this, right? I mean, I know around our hallways, we are really starting to deal with massive amount of change in different areas. We have obviously this great technological shift happening with Gen AI and agentic AI, which is changing the way that we are thinking about how we go to market. Ultimately, that's changing consumer behavior. As my boss likes to say, consumers now have less attention span than a goldfish, right? You're competing against the entirety of everything that's out there, the entirety of culture, and having to move at that speed of culture. At the same time, we're also having to deal with maybe changing regulations, and so there's just a lot that is going on. So with that said, I think it'd be great to give a little context, if we all can give a little context of, how we're kind of seeing the business and, some changes and we talked about kind of pivot, maybe some of the pivots that we are making kind of throughout the year, knowing that, we always kind of plan in advance, but, how are we kind of pivoting through this moment?
Me?
Sure, we'll go up and down.
Okay. Yeah, there's dozens of examples I could give for that, right? I think I think one of the things that probably surprised me the most this year, over the last couple of years, was in CTV, and I think CTV is obviously the topic that everybody loves to talk about because it's kind of say not new shiny object, but it is new and it's fragmented and it's complex. But CTV is a reach vehicle, not just it's how you buy TV with a digital lens. It's actually you can reach scale. Now you have live sports available on CTV, so I think that's something that we've leaned into a lot, and that's a pivot that I didn't see coming. I always thought this is going to kind of fall a little bit under our digital budgets, but no, it's upper funnel, and yes. So I think that's where I would go.
Love that.
I think, specific to shifts we've seen in the marketplace and really consumer behavior, I think attention is really where we're leaning in and trying to figure that out. I think, we've seen it, you said it, folks have the attention span of a goldfish. There's an entire generation, the Gen Z, that their average attention that they'll pay to an ad is going to be 6 to 7 seconds. So it's a huge, heavy lift on advertisers and brands to try and tell a story in 7 seconds. And I think, what we've seen the industry start pivoting towards is separating out that premium video based on the level of attention it's getting. And that's attention that's really driving action. And, in cinema, we're really seeing audiences lean in. Even those young audiences will pay attention for more than 7 seconds. They'll pay attention if they care about the content.
That's right. I've seen the Adelaide and Lumen data, and that is true.
I think for us, the story is the same but elevating. It's all about growth. It's all making sure that the Hispanic consumer is in high consideration, being that they're driving the growth in all the categories that keep our country healthy. But it's also being able to innovate around what the consumer wants today and delivering on the ROI for the client, which
Thank you.
which builds a curiosity, right? Like, what do you want? What are you trying to do? What's your primary objective? And how can we help you in that vein?
Awesome. I'd say as we're building this business, I think the question was like, what are we seeing in over the last 12 to 18 months? We've been building this business for the last 12 to 18 months, right? So we're in year 2 right now of the ads business here at Lyft. And I think what we're doubling down on is using location intent as an identifier, a key identifier for building identity across our platform, using it for modeling, segmentation, and ultimately attribution as well. So we're in this unique place where we know so much about where people go, where they live, where their home is, where their work is, where they've been in the past, and I think most importantly is where they're going at any given time. So in that opportunity, we're able to utilize those data sets and first-party data sets, right? And provide the right contextual relevancy in a quick fashion, with attention, right, being an issue, to drive results for our partners.
I love that. Maybe we can double click on that, Shane, and I'll go back to you, Christine, because I find this interesting dynamic that's going on. We're talking about kind of this technological revolution, and that usually coincides with data and data aggregation, data efficacy, and what I want to explore a little bit, I guess, is kind of just this changing technological advancement, whether that's Gen AI or others, which again tends to be more manifested through digital. You guys both have products that live in the physical world. I'm wondering how you're seeing this through your business of taking advantage of all these new technological opportunities in a physical world.
Sure. We really looked because obviously with cinema, you do have first-party data. We have people actually purchasing tickets. They're using credit cards within the environment. There's loyalty programs that they're signed up for. But we have to go so far beyond that to really make a robust data play and allow our clients the ability to really target audience segments. So I think for us, we launched Screenvision AMP, which is our audience management platform that really allows us to create data-driven plans for consumers. So through good partnerships that we've made, we work with LiveRamp and OpenAP to import their audience segments and really look at cinema in a more holistic way, but very targeted at the same time, being able to deliver not just age, gender, but really be able to deliver auto intenders between the ages of 25 to 54 for foreign auto. So we can really drill down now based on really housing that data ourselves.
Yeah, I'd say this is interesting. So we've been talking a little bit about this, right? If the transaction is the new cookie or location transactions are the new cookie, Lyft does $16 billion a year in transactions. That's a lot of money, right? So think about all that first-party data that enables us to build a business, not utilizing cookies, not utilizing, older style tracking technologies, and building a business with respect to where people are going. But what I'll say, and I'm sure you guys think about this too, is there's this value exchange between the customer, who's our rider, and when they give their location to us as a company to get picked up, we have to be super duper cautious about utilizing that data for building things without being super intentional and articulating back to the customer that this is what we're using it for, or else we lose that trust, right? And without trust, we are not a company anymore.
Right. Authentic, transparency. Just don't be creepy.
We're trying not to be.
Yeah. Is there anything that you want to add, kind of given your world on kind of the advancement of data and how you guys are thinking about that?
I mean, for us, we have 85 million-ish subscribers, free and paid, and we have credit data on those customers, right? So, we're a data business, we're a bureau, we have all that from our backbone, but, our consumer business, we have, again, 85 million permissioned customers where we have this data, and I think for us, it's, really just trying to find ways to take that first-party data and activate it out in the wild and find these customers, bring them back. I think we got to the point where, I don't know what the number was, but it was probably like around 70 million. We're like, I don't think we need to acquire customers, or it's harder to acquire customers, now. So how can we reacquire them? How do we bring them back? How do we, get ARPU up and MAU up and those things? So for us, it's just, data is always going to be king, but now our shift is, instead of using data for targeting people that we don't already have, we now are using data to target people that we do have and to bring them back in our world.
So you mentioned CTV and sort of upper funnel. Are you, through that lens of, needing to drive higher ARPU, more engagement, kind of bringing back customers, are you seeing your media mix change and some of those tactics needing to change?
Yeah, I mean, we're in an inflection point for our business where we are, again, I feel like we almost need to we're reinventing ourselves a little bit, in that we've gone for years where we've built all these products, all these consumer financial products for customers to help them through any part of their credit lives. And, I think now we're able to say, we can do a lot of things for you. We can't, we're not just a credit company. We're not, we don't just have like a credit card marketplace. We have a lot of ways to help you. So we're changing. We're building a little bit more brand. So we're going halo, upper funnel, like, hey, we're this brand that's here to help you. We're your, our new campaign is called Big Financial Friend. We are your big financial friend. We are here to help you in any way. We're your co-pilot in this journey. And so that's changed. But then the other part of it is the underside, which is the retargeting piece. And I think that's what I was just talking about. I think that's, super important to us. And it's like, we spent, I would say, less than 5%, less than 3% of our budget on retargeting. And this year I want to get it to 15 to 20. And so that's a big change when when you're talking about big numbers, that's a big number. So, being able to do that with effectiveness and efficiency is going to be a challenge, but that's a fun one for us.
Yeah, so I think what we're experiencing is, maybe a little bit of the recalibration of these dials of paid, owned, and earned, and how we're thinking about how we leverage that to bring people through the funnel, and what it means to have a brand, and that as a moat around the business. I firmly believe that kind of in this world where we're heading, where we have to market to agents and market to humans, if you don't have that powerful brand and you don't have that moat around your business, you are disintermediating yourself, and it could be a race to the bottom. With that sort of framing in mind, Sarah, I know we've worked together and done some of the most amazing culture-led marketing, to drive the brand that drives the business. We all talk about, kind of moving to outcomes-based business. We don't have the same KPIs as our CFO. This doesn't work, right?
Yeah, I think when you talk about data and outcomes and all of that, it comes down to two things. It comes down to trust and making sure you're partnering with the most trusted companies, because data is only as good as what you accept, and ensuring that the underserved are also counted. And so, in my opinion, when we work with clients like yourselves, I think there's three goals. The first goal is, what is your primary objective, and make sure that we hit that. We have the audience, so I'm not worried about that. The second one is how can we make sure that whatever we do sells up, down, right, and left, right? So you need to satisfy your leadership. You need to satisfy the objective of the campaign and getting consumers. You need to get earned media, which is what we did with our webinar. And you need to make sure that you're present through experiences. And so if you think that way, not holistically and not just one way, then you can deliver for a client. But back to data, utilizing your first-party data with your client's first-party data is the best way to go, and you have to do it with a trusted partner.
I love that. Maybe for the panel, we can kind of just double-click a little bit on this. You know, I want to explore what it means that we are moving at the speed of culture. We need to anchor ourselves in culture. I'm sure most of the briefs you get are in and around these themes. And so, you know, if we are moving to this world where the brief is about earned media, paid media is about driving earned media, because we are anchoring ourselves in culture, you know, what are you guys seeing that is working, that's really cutting through? How are you guys delivering on those culture-defining briefs?
So I like to say that cinema doesn't chase culture, we create it. Like, the movies really are cultural moments, and it allows brands, I think, the opportunity to really plan in advance for these cultural moments. We knew when Barbenheimer was going to be this pivot in marketplace. We know when Wicked comes out. We didn't realize it was going to be so big for Minecraft, but you have these huge cultural moments that the studios have laid out, and I think it's the right context as well for brands to be able to attach themselves to these planned cultural moments that just are spurred off of fandom. And I think when you can attach your brand to fandom, something someone's already passionate about that content, it really allows that consumer to change their perception of that brand and feel that it's actually part of the experience. And I think you always want organic, synergistic experiences when a brand's trying to attach to that content.
Yeah, Sarah and Univision is a great example, and I love that we both work with her and that team. But I think when you think about multicultural strategies and the data and the audiences and who we're trying to reach, it's like you want to do it in an authentic way. And I actually hate that I just said authentic because everyone always says it. But it's like, what's the other word? I don't know. But
Cultural way.
Cultural way. No. But no, I mean, honestly, it's. For us, running an ad that is just like a dubbed version of an English language ad is not going to be culturally relevant to this audience. Actually creating creative that actually speaks to that audience, that is authentic to that audience. God, I said it again. But it really does make a difference, right? We know that, right? We know that if we're just running 30-second spots, we're not going to get the same impact that if we're running 30-second spots and then also running a targeted social campaign, and then actually finding influencers that are from the culture and really can speak to the product and make people understand why it's relevant to them. And I think all that stuff is super important. It's not just the first touch point, and it's not just like checking a box anymore. You really have to dig in.
Not only that, but you also have to follow the consumer. I've been with this company for 17 years, and who our consumer was 17 years ago is very different than today. And so we not only need to make sure that we're winning for our clients, we need to make sure we're winning for our company, and we hold that primary position. And so, to what Christine said, having those cultural moments and educating our clients on what those are, to be ahead of it and to be there. And also, importantly, nobody has the bandwidth that they had 10 years ago. So you have to make sure that you have enough people to pull off the executions and the work to make sure that what you're doing actually works. Because what I hear regularly is, okay, what's the bandwidth going to be for us? What can you guys do? What can we do? And so, you got to make sure that those cultural moments deliver without being overwhelming.
I would just add, like, quickly, relevance. I'm not going to say authenticity, but I'll use relevance as the word there. So we look a lot into where people are going, how they're going, where the traffic patterns spike around key events like the first Sunday of NFL. We see 75% lifts in our actual usage 30 minutes prior to game time, through games, until 30 minutes after games. So we start to look at these moments, whether it's the U.S. Open or South by Southwest or Coachella, and we look at how people are using rideshare. And then what we're doing is we're trying to identify, like, what's the right messaging, and that's relevant in a way that drives an outcome. So think about, like, and I'll leave this, like, think about how you feel when you take a car, if you take a Lyft from an airport to go home, coming back from a vacation with your family. You are a different person than you will be, I promise you this, coming back from Cannes to go home and to see your family. My wife will hate me.
Definitely going to all be different people at the end of this week.
Who I am. Yeah, exactly.
I'll be
So,
in a
like, that's a
coffin.
very different person that, like, we think about how do we deliver a relevant audience segment in a way that maybe is taking a ride to the same place, home, but then has a very different, past history of travel behaviors, and how do we allow a marketer to serve a brand that's relevant in that moment?
So let me stick with you for a second, Shane, and then we can kind of come back to line. But, we've talked a lot about data. We've talked a lot about outcomes. In every brief, you get the measurement question. So how are we proving out that this stuff is working? As we move to, some of these amazing cultural moments that we're creating, which, is a new type of form of messaging. Sometimes it comes with a premium. There's a bit of a leap, I think, as marketers that we have to make. How are we showing that all of this is working?
I mean, it's a great question. So we, like, immediately when we started, we launched ads at the end of April, at the end of 2023, and we immediately realized we needed to partner with third-party partners like Nielsen or Kantar to prove brand lift. So we went right after the fact that the average time you use the app is 24 minutes. You're very focused on the app when you're using it to figure out where your car is, when you're going to get picked up, what the make, model, trim is, what the license plate is, what's your ETA when you're in there. And in that moment, we're delivering a really, like, nice, large sight, sound, and motion-enabled unit. So we believed, and our theory was that we could build brand efficacy, and we've done that. We've proved that through our third-party partners. But now we're starting to figure out, like, what is the native and custom and bespoke ad solution that a brand can bring to a rider that maybe gives them a better user experience. So think about, like, when you leave a concert, you live in LA, we live in or West Coast anyway. When you leave SoFi, in order to get a Lyft or an Uber, you have to walk 20 minutes to a Sizzler. Like, that's a terrible user experience. Imagine a brand coming in and giving somebody a priority pickup, giving them a fast pickup, and having a priority pickup lane right there outside of the stadium. So those are the things: discounted rides, upgraded rides, faster rides. If we can enhance that user journey, we're seeing really good results for the brand who's coming in to sponsor that.
Love that. Christine, what about you?
I kind of lean back on attention, and I feel that attention more and more is becoming a new metric and potentially even a new form of currency. And, we're working closely with the agencies and with partners, Lumen, Adelaide, like you mentioned. They are able to attach attention scores to the mediums, right? To people actually visually watching the ads during that content. So it's not watching the content, but it's the ads during the content that they're measuring the seconds that your eyes are on the screen. And I think we're in a fortunate time in media where there are many ways to actually go down the funnel, prove out that attribution. And I think, we're able to now say confidently, high attention to the ads through attribution drives business outcomes. And I think we're finally in a position to guarantee on those business outcomes. And whether that's going to be sales lift, foot traffic, web lift, there's so many different ways now to understand the goal of the client and understand what their KPI is that they want measured against and actually deliver on that. I think we're past the days of impressions being the only form of currency. And I think that we're into impressions now lead to impact. And let's measure on that impact through attention.
Impact and outcome. I love that, by the way. I mean, we are an attention-based company, and ultimately, we have the same exact data, so I can verify everything that you're talking about. We just happened to do a big study for all of our digital advertising in 100-plus markets, and for the most part, a lot of our digital advertising, on average, the best we were seeing as attention is about 3.5 seconds. You're not telling a brand story in 3.5 seconds, which is why we're having this discussion of how you start to create cultural impact and a different type of messaging. And I love that answer of.
And I think it's amazing to have that comparison, right? 3.5 seconds on digital, where in cinema, where people are passionate about what they're there to see, they've paid to see it, they've made appointment viewing for it, we see 26 seconds of that ad. So you're really getting this high percentage of time that people's eyes are actually on the screen.
Right. People aren't looking at it, it's not going to work. I love it. And how do you feel from, again, just another sort of brand point of view on this? Kind of just the move to outcomes, whether that's attention or otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, what Christine said, I think, was really relevant. I think there was a point where, everything was everyone was trying to solve for the actual, what was the monetization event, what was the acquisition, and it's like, no, there's other KPIs that make a lot of sense that are very important to brands. And so what you were saying, attention's one, right? I think all marketing is performance marketing. If I'm running a marketing campaign, It has to perform in some way. If it doesn't perform, it's not, I don't have a job, right? But so if you as a seller can come in and say, hey, these are the metrics you guys should really be thinking about. They're not all about performance. It's not all about the users that you acquire, but it's about the eyeballs, and it's about who's paying attention, and it's about ad recall, and there's all these upper funnel KPIs that people kind of forget about a little bit, and they make a lot of sense. And I came from kind of more of a performance marketing lens, and now I'm kind of moving towards brand, and I think that it's just really just performance is what your target KPIs end up being, right, for each campaign. And so, it could be attention, it could be actual revenue.
Love that. All right, we have about a minute left, so we're going to end with a little bit of lightning round just to kind of bookmark the discussion. Christine, we're going to start with you. We're just going to do kind of one question. I'm going to ask a different question of each of you, if that's all right. Okay. Christine. We're going to start with Christine. That's all right. So, what new role or skill set are you hiring for that didn't exist 5 years ago?
So absolutely, we have now built out finally a programmatic network in cinema. And 5 years ago, it was unthought of that we would have programmatic cinema. It never felt like it could feel organic in our show and authentic, but it's taken us a lot of time and money. But we now are fully programmatic in the early portion of our show, and the next step there is to start selling it. So things like the trade desk and everything is great, but I think we're very much actively looking for a programmatic seller to come in and understand what that looks and feels like in cinema.
Love that. All right, it's going to turbocharge the business. All right, Sarah. If you can snap your fingers and fix one thing about the current media ecosystem, what would it be?
Well, we all want more money. I would say if I could snap my fingers, and what I'm trying to do during this is really truly understand how companies are measuring, investing, and using AI. I know how I use it. I know how my son, who's a college student, which I don't even know why I'm paying for college, uses it. I know a little bit about how our company uses it for creative, and in language, it's tough because we've got 73 people that represent, I think, 16 or 17 Spanish-speaking countries in the world, and we haven't been able to crack the code on creative like people have in English. So if I could snap my fingers, it's to really be curious and understand more how people are using AI.
Love that. Yes, we all want that one. I think that's great. All right, Steve, one thing you've changed your mind about in the last year?
Let's see.
Being authentic.
Definitely not being authentic. I've always thought that. Let's see. I changed my mind on. I mentioned something earlier around CTV and CTV as a reach vehicle. I think one thing that really surprised me in the last year was live sports and CTV. Our biggest, probably most impactful brand integration, brand buy of the year was sponsoring the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight on Netflix.
Nice.
And it ended up being this cultural moment. I felt that it was going to be, but you never know, right?
Yeah.
And that is a streaming partner that has an insane amount of reach globally, that is doing their first real live sports event. And you know what happened? They're like, oh, this worked really well. Let's buy the NFL. And then they did an NFL Christmas game. Like, I didn't think that was happening. I thought that was years down the road.
Totally agree. And all in culture. All right. Shane, bring us home. Here we go. How are you coaching your sales team differently today than you were a year ago?
I mean, let's take it back to AI. Like, do we need to coach our sales teams anymore, or can we just like create an agent or create a prompt for that? Honestly, it's how do you use technology to free you up in a space. If AI is a good example to use here, is how do you save some time in your day? Everyone hates. I mean, we all hate email, right? Does anyone like Slack? Like, I can't handle it. It's too many. Like, how do we start to utilize AI to free up some of the inbound so that we can think, be creative, and actually, be efficient with our time and be productive with what we're trying to do.
I love that. I think that's a great way to end it. Thank you to this amazing panel. Thanks to the audience.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Jay.